Hey guys, it's Kevin again, here for an individual episode review. Oh my god, I know, it's crazy. It's been so long since I was able to do this, but listen, the month of June is insane for TV. There is a lot coming out that I'm very excited for, and not only are these shows like I'm pumped for, but a lot of these shows, thankfully, are weekly releases, so that actually gives me incentive to finally start doing individual episode reviews again. And I don't know when the last time I did this. I think Euphoria was the last time I did this, which was like forever ago. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. Very excited to get back into this, of course. But you know, I'm going to stop being around the bush. We're talking about the Acolyte, episodes 1 through 2, and let's just get into it. And this show, it pretty much centers 100 years before the rise of the Empire. Basically, we follow this dark assassin, May, who is killing off Jedi Masters for seemingly unknown reasons, and the whole show is pretty much trying to unpack why she's doing this and whether or not this is justified or not, but also what could have led her to committing these crimes. And I was honestly really excited for this show for a couple reasons. I mean, one, I love the fact that this is mostly an original story. That's not something we've been able to say with a lot of Star Wars stuff lately, especially when it comes to these Disney Plus shows. A lot of them have been based on pre-established characters. This one, on the other hand, were characters that, at least to my knowledge, we don't know, and I think that's really cool. I like the fact that this is trying to do something different. I really like the cast that was attached to this. I thought the premise sounded really interesting, so I was really excited to see how this was going to be. The marketing really won me over and things like that. Just to preface right off the bat, though, the biggest hesitation I had going into it is that it is yet another Disney Plus Star Wars show, and I know it's been a little bit since I've talked about these. I haven't done videos for all of the seasons that have come out, but I'll just go through the ones I've seen real quick. Book of Boba Fett, as you've seen my reviews, not a fan of that, and I really feel like that was kind of the sign that maybe some of these weren't going to be all that great. Obi-Wan actually kind of had me for the first couple episodes, I'm not going to lie. I was like highly considering doing like individual episode reviews for that show. I remember I rewatched episode 1 and then I just didn't get round to it. And you know, there are a bunch of reasons as to why, but a lot of that was because like the show just kind of fell off. Like once we got to like the back half of that season, it really just was not working for me anymore. So that really didn't end up working out. And I was very let down. There were definitely some good moments. Ewan McGregor was good as ever. I liked Moses Ingram. I liked her performance. I really liked Vivi and Lyra Blair. I liked their dynamic in the show, but as a whole, I mean, it just really just kind of became a mess by the end of it. And then Mandalorian season 3, I saw one episode of. I haven't watched since then. It felt like a step down, and I didn't hear great things, so I didn't really have the motivation to continue watching. Andor is phenomenal. It's as great as you've heard. I don't know why I didn't do a review for it, but once I do a full rewatch of it, I will eventually do a review of that one. Very excited for season 2. That's easily the best Star Wars thing we've had in like a long time. And then Ahsoka, I started watching, but I honestly didn't finish it because I didn't know a lot of the lore. I haven't seen Rebels, I hadn't seen Clone Wars, so I just didn't feel like I was someone who could fairly judge the show, not knowing so much of the pre-established characters and the lore surrounding it and whatnot. So yeah, that's really like my brief thoughts on that. So when it comes to the Acolyte, that was really my biggest reservation, is that this, oh my god, this is another Disney Plus show. They haven't been that great lately. Very often this has been happening where I'm getting excited for a show, I'm real looking forward to it coming out, and then it just utterly disappoints me. And I was really hoping that the Acolyte would not turn out the way. I was hoping this would be the one that could potentially actually be something special and could potentially end up really showcasing how great Star Wars can be when utilized to its full potential. Especially because I feel like at this point, like, we've seen all we needed to with, like, the Skywalker part of things. We've seen everything we could with those characters, everything they're doing with these characters at this point. It just feels repetitive. It is I think it's really is time to start branching out and giving us new characters. That's why The Mandalorian was so refreshing. That's why Andor was so refreshing, and it really just seems like this show was going to be something completely different. Give us an entire different pocket of the universe that we just hadn't touched upon before, and give us us some really interesting new characters to follow. So I actually despite the fact that, like I said, a lot of Star Wars shows haven't been that great, this one really did seem like it could end up being something special and be one of the better projects to come out lately. And I'm happy to report that while I don't love everything we saw in these first 2 episodes, I'm honestly pretty impressed. I think the show has a lot of potential. I really like a lot of what they set up here, and if they're able to continue doing and building off what they did in these first 2 episodes when things really start moving along, I really think this could end up becoming one of the more exciting projects we've seen from Star Wars in quite a bit. But either way, we're just going to get into it right now. So I do want to start off talking about the cast here, which this was easily one of the biggest things I was most excited for when it came to this show. I really liked seeing the cast that was announced here. Was a lot of actors that I've seen in stuff, but they haven't really been in something of this caliber before, and it was really cool to get to see them take on this show. It's also a very diverse cast, which is always great to see, and not something we've seen a lot in Star Wars, so that's something I also really enjoy. But when it comes to the performances here, I think everyone really does deliver. I think everyone really does end up killing it in this show. Even some of the actors that don't have as much to do in these first 2 episodes, I think everyone makes at least somewhat of an impression. But Amandla Stenberg was really the biggest reason I was excited for this in terms of the actors. I mean, she always has delivered for me, going all the way back to something like the first Hunger Games. I mean, I've always been a big fan of hers. I think she is so good at just showcasing these raw emotions, but also playing these very complex characters. And I mean, I think she was just the perfect person to play both of these 2 characters we have here, of both Osha and May. I mean, I think she is just fantastic here. The way she's able to kind of showcase the differences between these 2 characters, but then also the similarities between the 2, I think is also really well done. But also really getting you to understand both of these characters, even though, yes, May is kind of shrouded in mystery right now. We don't really understand why she's doing what she's doing. I still felt so drawn to her, and I think she's the kind of character where every time she's on screen, I mean, I really want to know more about her. And then Osha as a character, I think, is also really interesting because she's kind of the polar opposite of May, but yet it also seems like she has some similarities. There's a connection of sorts between the 2, and I really like what Stenberg is bringing to the table. I feel like she's giving layers to these characters that otherwise just simply wouldn't be there, and I think that she's just doing a really great job here. I mean, yes, there are things about this character, like I said, we don't know, but I think she finds a way to keep this character compelling throughout, and I just really enjoyed her performance in the show, so I think she is fantastic. But I gotta say, the standout of the show for me so far has to be Jung-jae, who plays Soul, who is fucking incredible in this show. He's one of those actors, I really haven't seen him in that much. I actually haven't seen all of Squid Game. I've seen a couple episodes of it. I still need to finish it. But of what I've seen, he's obviously fantastic, but I think he just fits so well into this role of Soul, someone who is this Jedi Master and really is just constantly feeling guilty for all that has gone down, and really kind of ends up being the heart of the show. He's easily the character I'm the most drawn to, besides obviously our 2 main leads. I just really like what they are doing with him. I think that he is just really, I think he's just really pouring his heart and soul into this role, and I just really like what he is and what he is trying to do with this character, where he's going and things like that. I think it's just really interesting to watch, especially now knowing how connected he is to all of this. I'm really interested in seeing what they end up doing in the moving forward. Of course, I'll talk more about it when it comes to the writing and things like that, but I really like what they are doing with his character. I really like what Jay is doing in this show so far, and I think if he continues, he could be one of those actors that really ends up breaking out as an actor through this show. I mean, already I think he's a name that people know him as, oh, that's the guy from Squid Game. I think after this show, he's really going to pop. I think he's really going to pop off as an actor, and I think we're really going to see that starting within this show, because he just really is just killing it in this role so far, and I think he easily has some of the most compelling scenes of the show, of both of these episodes. So I really love the performance that he's giving. Everyone else, I think, is really good here. Nobody really sticks out to the effect aspect of those two. I will say Carrie-Anne Moss, despite her limited screen time, really made an impression for me. I thought that she was just really good here as Indara. I want to know more about her. I hope this isn't the last we see of that character. Of course, I'll talk more about that in the spoilers, but I'll talk more about that when we get to the writing. But I really like what they are doing, what she ended up bringing to the table so far. You really feel like she is the most powerful person in the room, and that's why that first scene is as shocking as it really is. Charlie Barnett and Dafne Keen, they're good for what they have. I enjoy their performances in the show so far. Same with Rebecca Henderson, but those are really the performances that are sticking out to me. Mandy Jacinto, I like a lot as well as Quimir. I find his character to be very interesting, the way he's connected to everything. I want to know more about him. But again, I think acting-wise, everyone's doing a really good job. I think all the performances are really solid here. The two, Stenberg and Jay are really the two that stick out so far, but I really do enjoy this ensemble, and I'm hoping throughout this season, in a show that has, a whole group of just some incredibly talented and multifaceted actors, I really do hope the Acolyte makes the best use of them, because I think all of them are really talented. I think they're all giving really solid performances, and I hope the show ends up utilizing them all to their fullest potential. Alright, so with the performance out of the way, I really do want to get into these first two episodes and really just talk about what happens, which I will say, not a lot to talk about from a substance level. There isn't a lot that goes down in these first two episodes, and honestly, I'm kind of fine with that. I feel like the biggest issue, not just for Star Wars, but for most Disney Plus series in general, is they don't know when to pump the brakes. They're always so fast-paced with their stories that by the time we get to the finale, it just feels so incredibly rushed. It doesn't feel like the show has really gotten there, and the pacing feels so off. So I really like the fact that this show is taking its time. I like that we have 8 episodes. I like that we're able to tell this story to its fullest potential. Yes, we have shorter run times, but I would not say that this show is too fast-paced so far. If anything, it is a lot slower than a lot of the Star Wars shows that we've seen, and I'm honestly happy about that, because I think the show is benefiting, at least in my opinion, from the more patient sort of, story we're getting here so far. But what we do have in this first episode, of course, is right in the beginning, we see this character who, at first, we don't realize it's May, but it is May, and she goes in to see Indara, who I love the way they marketed this character. I went into this show thinking that Carrie-Anne Moss's character was the villain of this show. The way they were hyping her up, I thought that's what they were doing. The clip that we saw in this first episode of her defeating of her going against Indara, I did not think that was going to be the opening sequence of the show. I thought that was going to be something that comes in a little bit later. They released that clip when I saw a re-release of The Phantom Menace. Still not a fan of that movie. It's not terrible, but I'm not a fan of that movie at all. But they did play this clip right after it, and this was the clip that they showed. I did not expect that to be the opening scene of the show, but what a way to kick things off, because it really gives you this sense that oh my god, all of these characters could die at any minute. Anyone who is a Jedi Master in this show is not safe, and I love just the immediate tension that we have in that opening sequence, not really knowing what is going on or why May is going in and just fighting Indara right off the bat and tells her that they have this unfinished business. And you can see at first that Indara, she doesn't want to fight her. Everybody, in the canteen is laughing. They're not taking May seriously. So I'm really intrigued by, how did this all come to be? What really happened there? I think the show does such a great job of immediately presenting you with this incident that has you posing all of these questions. And that is what a great opening scene of a show does. And I think that's what, the Acolyte has done really well. It's probably one of the strongest first scenes I've seen from any of these Star Wars Disney Plus shows so far, so I really love the way things started out here. But then the rest of this first episode is pretty much focusing on the character of Osha and how she is kind of, spending her day-to-day life. She works in this, basically she is this former Jedi Padawan, and she now is this, what's called a Meeknik, and she does all these repairs on starships and things like that. I know people have talked about like, oh, why is there fire in space? I didn't really care about that. I didn't really pay that any mind. If people didn't complain about it, I wouldn't have even noticed, to be honest with you. I kind of just saw it as, this is her job, this is what she does, and I didn't really think much else of it. You know, if that's an issue, then cool, but I just didn't really end up bothering me that much. But she immediately is questioned for this crime. People are suspecting her to do it, and she denies it. And we eventually find out about her twin sister, May, who allegedly died in this fire years ago, and OSHA, you know, was under the belief that she was dead. But we start to see in this first episode there is some sort of like force connection between the two, and I really like this a lot. It feels like this show is taking ideas that have kind of been set up before in other projects, like say The Last Jedi or something like that, and kind of expanding upon it. And it seems like that's what this show is going to do. The idea of OSHA and May having this like force connection and things like that, I'm very intrigued by as to what's really going on there, how this has happened, you know, what really has gone them to go down these different paths. I think all of that is really intriguing, and I really like the way all of this is set up, the way this whole show is presented as this like murder mystery of sorts. I think is really compelling. It really is an example of like how you take a property like Star Wars and do something distinctly different, and that is what this show for the most part is doing so far. I wouldn't say this is like other Disney Plus shows I've seen for the most part. I don't think it has like as distinct of a vision as say Andor, but it is doing something different story-wise here, and that is something I am going to commend this show for. Now, I do want to bring this up because everyone has talked about it. Yes, they very much treat this twin reveal as a twist of sorts, and I can understand why some people took issue with it. I thought it was really cool the way they, really let it all play out, really making you believe that potentially OSHA could maybe just be doing this, you know, outside of her duties as a mechanic. There is a possibility that this is potentially something she could be dabbling in. Yes, it was fairly obvious that she wasn't involved in what was going down, but I think the show did a pretty good job of kind of peeling back the layers of what's really going on there. The brief glimpses we get of May and OSHA's childhood also is very compelling to me. I'm hoping we get to see more of that. I'm hoping it's not just these brief glimpses throughout the whole show. That could get very tiring if they continue to do that, so I'm hoping that we end up getting expanding upon that more and really diving deeper into like what ended up happening in their childhood that caused all of this to happen. But either way, like I'm really intrigued. I like the way they're telling this story. Despite the fact that yes, I think the reveal was kind of obvious, I don't really have an issue because I still found it really intriguing the way it all went down, and I still found myself really drawn to these two characters, so it's not really that big of an issue for me. Like I said, she's interrogated, and despite the fact that she is claiming that she didn't do this and that this wasn't her behind it, the council just doesn't believe her. They still are very much suspecting that OSHA is the one behind this, but that's where Soul comes into play. Soul is a character that I find to be very interesting so far because he is really, it seems to be this Jedi master that is so highly respected. We see him teaching this group of younglings and things like that, and we see him in the beginning. He's very reluctant. He doesn't really want to have to investigate this murder. He doesn't really want anything to do with this, but you can also see this immediate guilt that he feels no matter what is going on in this show. He is blaming himself for it, and I'm really interested in seeing like what exactly happened with Soul, what got him to feel this way, because he, like I said, he immediately is feeling like this is his fault, no matter what went down. But the thing about Soul is that even though he knows that, like, he had nothing to do with, even though he is suspecting that May is dead, he's feeling this immediate guilt in the show. And I'm really interested in seeing what that is all about, because he talks about in this episode how, May started this fire. He took in OSHA as, like, the sole survivor. She became his Padawan of sorts, and we don't really know what happened after that. Either she stopped training, or, whether she stopped training or something failed and he had to stop training her. But either way, Sol is feeling guilty for what happened, and I really want to see more of what's going down. But it also is his trust in Osha. The minute that she tells him that May is alive, he doesn't even hesitate. He just immediately believes her. And there's clearly some sort of bond between these two that he feels devoted to. He feels like, Osha is someone that he can take her at her word. And I just really am interested in seeing more about his character and how he is involved with all this and the guilt that he really does feel. What is that all about? Is he connected to these Jedi Masters? Because obviously we'll talk a little bit more about May's plan, but he's involved with what's going down clearly. I'm really interested in seeing why he is feeling so much guilt throughout this show. I think that is something that is really working for Sol as a character, and I'm really find myself drawn to him as a result. So by the end of episode 1, Osha does end up telling Sol that May is alive. He believes her, but they need to go somewhere in order to find her. We're not entirely sure what's going on, but we find out more in episode 2, where, again, there's not a ton to talk about here. Episode 2, again, fairly straightforward. We have Osha going after her next Jedi Master in the character of Torben, and the way that all went down I thought was really interesting. Torben is constantly in this meditative state. He's not really resisting. He's not really doing anything. And she, tries to get him once. It doesn't work, but she gives him the poison a second time, and we get a little bit more of an idea of who she is connected to, who really is, her sort of lackey of sorts. And that, of course, ends up being Quaimir, who is this smuggler and really seems kind of ambivalent to a lot of what's going on. He doesn't really seem very fazed by what's happening, but he also doesn't have a lot of knowledge as to why she is doing any of this. He doesn't really seem to have much of an understanding of what's really going on, because he is interrogated in this episode and really just ends up telling them hey, I just know that May wants revenge. I don't know why she wants revenge. All I know is that we find a little bit more of her plan. And we get a little bit more of her plan through this interrogation, where we find out that May is trying to kill 4 Jedi Masters that I'm assuming have wronged her in some way, but Quaimir doesn't really know the details, doesn't really seem to care much about the details, and so I'm interested to see what that is all about. Now we really have our inciting incident of what really is going down. And one of those Jedi Masters is, of course, Sol, and that's why this is so much more interesting. As a result, it kind of connects to his guilt. It gives us more of an idea of why he is so indebted to Osha in that way, what really could have happened for things to fall out that drastically between May and Sol, because obviously he didn't train her, but he trained Osha. I'm interested to see what really ended up happening there, and that has me very intrigued overall. I mean, the moment where Sol is confronting her and he's trying to get her to hopefully, confess to what she did and kind of stop her and kind of still see the good in her, you can see that she isn't willing to do that. She is very fixated on this plan. She doesn't really want to deviate from it in any way. And of course, the way this all ends up going down, he pretty much tells her, that he tells her, he's trying to stop her, but he also tells her that Osha is alive. And so now we're at a point where both sisters know the other still exists and the other is still alive, and this makes things even more interesting to me, because it seemed like Osha believed that May died in the fire, while May believes that Osha died in the fire. And so I'm wondering how that all really ended up going down. Was one of them lied to? Was one of them led down this path? I'm not really sure how that all happened, but that has me very intrigued for sure. And the way this all ends, the way this episode ends with her going to her next Jedi Master in Kalnaka, who is also a Wookiee. What a cool idea, by the way. The fact that we have a Wookiee as one of the Jedi Masters. I'm really intrigued to see what they do with that, but also if May is going to be successful this time around. We could see that she almost didn't, end up going through with killing Torben. She wasn't really sure if it was going to happen, but now she has, and it seems like she is unstoppable at this point. But we also see that she can't really fight against them. She has to take other measures in order to do that, and I like that a lot. I like that she isn't someone who can just easily fight against any of the Jedi Masters. We saw it with Indara. We didn't really see it with Torben because he was in this meditative state, but even with Sol, I mean, she has, she stands no chance against him. It's going to be really hard, I think, to kill him. It's going to be really difficult to get to him, and so I'm really interested to see how that all really does end up going down. But again, I like that we have this inciting incident now. I like that we have more of an idea of what is really going to happen, of what is really going down, and how this all is really going to play out moving forward. And I think it was good that these first 2 episodes were mostly just exposition heavy and really just got us a chance to understand, what this show is really going to be all about. What are we really trying to do here? Why is this such an important thing? But also give us a brief glimpse into why May might be behind this, which we don't really have a full understanding of now, but I'm really intrigued by that as to why May is so focused on killing these Jedi Masters. How have they wronged her in that way? What really caused them to, what really caused her to go down this path? I think that is going to be very intriguing to see, and I'm excited to see how that all does play out overall. I think the only other thing to talk about is really who is May answering to? Like, who is the person behind all of this? We hear a bit about this, master of sorts that she is kind of under the tutelage of and maybe is the one behind everything. We hear his voice, like a distortion of his voice in the first episode, but other than that, we don't have any idea of what's really going on. So I want to know more about that. Who is May really working with? Who is the person that's in charge of everything? And what really has led her to go down this path? I mean, I like the fact that those questions were not answered yet. Obviously, we still have that bit of mystery going on, and I think all of that is very intriguing. But the other thing I wonder is, are we going to see these characters at all again? Is that really the end we get of, like, Indara? Is that really all we're going to see of her? I'm not so sure about that. I feel like they're going to show us flashbacks of some sort. There already are photos of, like, Dean Charles Chapman looking a lot younger, so I feel like we're gonna get at least some kind of flashback with these Jedi Masters in a different phase of life, and that's something I'm very excited to see because I want to see what the connection between all 4 of them is. This can't just be like a random thing. There's a reason why May is so has this desire to kill all 4 of them, and I'm interested to see what that really is all about. So again, I think they did a really good job of just laying things out and really just doing what they could to hook me in. I really was impressed by what we did end up getting in these first 2 episodes, albeit pretty simplistic stuff, but it's compelling enough to where I really do feel myself I really do find myself intrigued to see where else this ends up going. But I'm also really interested to see, now that the 2 sisters know of each other's existence, where do they really stand? Is this going to be like something where it's a happy reunion between the 2 of them? They're happy to, be with each other and maybe bring out the best in each other? Or is there a ton of resentment and bitterness for things that have happened in the past that we're not aware of yet? There's a lot that this show really can dive into when it comes to that dynamic, and I'm just really compelled to see what's going to happen there, because we get this moment in episode 2 where, Osha wants to confront May, and Sol basically tells her, like, no, you're going to be going down this path of vengeance that May is doing, and there's no real like purpose to that. And so again, I'm interested to see what really happened between these two. I'm sure there is, at least it seems like there's way more that happened than just that fire. There's a lot we still don't know about these two characters, and that's something that I really am excited to learn more about throughout this show. There's also, I think, a lot they can do with the idea of May and Osha looking exactly the same. We get a moment in episode 2 where Osha is pretending to be May to kind of get information out of Quaimir, and I hope we get to see that with maybe May pretending to be Osha. What is that really going to do for these two characters? Are they gonna put them further at odds with each other? I hope we get to see more of that. One, because Stenberg is just killing it in both roles and does a really good job of showing the similarities between the two of them, but also I just want to see more interplay between the two. I think it was really smart to not have the two of them really interact at all in these first 2 episodes, so we really got to know them both as individuals. But now that we have an idea of who the two of them really are, I think now the show can really just play around with that dynamic a lot more, and I'm excited to see how they end up doing that. So the other thing I really do want to talk about in the show, now that we've gotten all the like main stuff out of the way, is really just the cinematography, but also the action sequences. I think are really well done. I've seen people say that this looks like a TV show, and I don't think that's an issue. I don't think everything needs to look like Game of Thrones. Yes, Andor had its own sort of look to it, but I think the look and feel of this show is really well done. There are some scenes that particularly really stuck out to me. Any scene with May in particular I thought looked really great. The scene at the end of episode 1 where she is near that like cliffside or whatever, I thought that scene was really striking. I have a ton to say about the cinematography. It's not incredible by any means, but I do think throughout this show we're gonna, I think there's gonna be more to talk about in that area. But like I said, this was a very like exposition heavy first 2 episodes, so there's not really a ton to talk about on the cinematography side of things. From an action perspective, though, there actually is quite a bit to talk about. I like a lot. I love how the show is utilizing hand-to-hand combat so far. I think both of the big action set pieces we got in episode 1 and episode 2, I think were really memorable. The fight between May and Indara was so enthralling and honestly, I think really fluid the way that it was put together. I talked about before how much I love that first scene, but I just think it sucks you into the show perfectly, but also really demonstrates just how great the action in the show is going to be. I really am impressed by what they were able to do. I think the other, Star Wars Disney Plus shows, they've had some good action sequences so far, but this really seems like the first one that's like really trying to focus on that and really doing just such a great job with it. And then the scene we get between Sol and May did such a great job of showing the relationship that these two characters had, but also showing the resistance between the two, but also just showing the tension between the two, knowing at any second, knowing just how hard it's going to be for May to go after Sol, but also seeing how much Sol doesn't want to have to do this to May. Sol doesn't want to have to kill May. Sol doesn't want to fight May, and May, I don't think wants to have to kill Sol, but I think feels that she has to because he's on, he's one of the Jedi Masters that has wronged her and things like that. So I think they did a great job of both enhancing the tension, really just presenting the tension and giving you some really memorable, fight choreography, but also doing a great job of showcasing the relationships between all these two characters just through those fights. And I think that's what the best Star Wars fights have done. Not only just heighten the tension, but also really show us the, where the two characters that are fighting, where they're at in terms of their relationship. You think about like the Vader and Luke fight or the Obi-Wan and Anakin fight. Both of those are perfect examples of that. And while these aren't at all on that level, I like how distinctly different they are. Really, like I said, utilizing this hand-to-hand combat. Not really a big use of lightsabers, and I'm honestly okay with that. I don't think we need to, always lightsabers in everything. Yes, we see Indara use it for like 5 seconds, but I like the fact that the show isn't really focusing as much on that, more so on this hand-to-hand combat, and I think it is that much more impressive as a result, and really also helps the show stick out as something of its own. The score also, I really love, I always have enjoyed Michael Abels as a composer, and this is really no different. I like the way that he gives this show its own sort of feel. I like the way the score really just gives us that sort of mystery type feel, does a really good job with that. But I also really just enjoy his musical. I just really enjoy the way he's able to heighten the tension and the drama of this show. I think he does a really good job with that. So I really enjoy the score a lot. The editing these first 2 episodes I thought were pretty good. There are some points where it felt like we were cutting a bit too quick in between scenes. Like, for example, we have this conversation with Osha, immediately cutting back to Seoul, and then cutting back to Osha trying to break out of prison, and then immediately come back to Seoul. That was a little messy, but for the most part, I didn't really have an issue with the editing in these first 2 episodes. I think that for the most part, they were pretty tight, and I think despite the fact that, yes, episode 2 was only like 37 minutes long, I didn't feel that it was too brief. I thought that it did a good job of giving us enough information to really suck us in, but also doing a good job of utilizing the episode to its fullest. I don't think there's too much that I don't think there's too much that I felt like that was underwritten or I need to see more of that. I think they did a good job with that. There are some things that are bringing the show down just a little bit for me, to where I can't say I love this show so far, but I really like a lot of what it's doing. And the main thing that holds it back is that aside from the characters of Osha, May, and Seoul, I don't feel connected to the other characters in this show. I mean, for example, you have like Yord, who really is just this very snarky, by-the-book type character. That's really all he is. He has a duty. He wants to do what he can to adhere to it. He doesn't really want to deviate from that in any way. And I think there's potential for his character, for us seeing why he has such a strict set of principles and why he doesn't want to go against, the ways of the Jedi or anything like that. I'm interested to see more about his character, but this episode, they didn't really do a lot with him. Same with Dafne Keen. I enjoy her in this show so far, but there's not really a lot with her either, so I didn't really find myself that sucked into what she was doing. I also hope we get more of these Jedi Masters. I don't want this show to just be, oh, we killed this Jedi Master, now we move on to the next one. I hope we're able to dive deeper into what did they all really do wrong, what specific part did they play in May's hatred towards them, and also who is May connected to? Is May annoyed? Is May the one that feels wronged by them? Or is it driven by whoever is her superior, whoever is the person that is, her leader, the person that is driving all this action? Who really is the one behind all of this? I hope that's something they're able to dive into, and I think they will. I'm just hoping that by the end of the show, I can say I still felt that despite the fact that like Indara and Torben were killed off early on the show, it still felt like the show developed their characters, because right now I don't feel that connected to them. Quymir is a character I do feel intrigued by, but I want to know more about him. So that's really, I'd say, my biggest issue with the show, is that I think aside from those 3 characters, the other ones in the show just really aren't that interesting so far, and I hope they're able to further develop them in a way to where I do feel connected to them by the end of this show overall. The only other issue I have with it, and like I said, this really isn't an issue yet, it just could potentially become one, is that I hope we get more flashbacks with May and Osha's childhood. I don't want to see the same 5-second scene of the fire and things like that. I understand that is, what really drove them apart, but I want to see more of what led to that point, what caused May to set that fire and things like that. Again, I think it's something that we are going to get. I just worry that this is all we're going to get in terms of the flashbacks, and we're not going to get a full understanding of what happened, and it's going to take too long to get to that point. But again, it's really hard to identify, clear issues within just the first 2 episodes of an 8-episode season. But, I mean, like I said, overall, it really didn't hinder my enjoyment of these first 2 episodes overall. I like what we're getting. I like that this is way more of this crime drama of sorts. I like the story we're telling with May in particular of what really drove her to this point. Seoul as a character is someone I really feel connected to. I think he provides a sense of heart to the show that works really well, but also his relationship between both sisters. I'm interested in diving deeper into what that's all about. What did the Jedi Masters do that really wronged May and things like that? But also, how is this all going to end up going down? You know, is May going to be able to carry this all out? Is she going to be able to, you know, kill all the Jedi Masters, or is she going to fold? And are we going to see her, you know, kind of, and are we going to see, you know, a greater evil behind it all? I'm interested in seeing what really ends up going down in this show. So I think there are a lot of questions that these first 2 episodes pose, and that is what a great show should do. They should, you know, hook you in from the start, but leave you wanting more. And I can say that both of these episodes very much did do that. There are some things that I hope the show does improve upon. Like I said, some of the characters are just a little too under one note so far for my liking. But it really doesn't take away from the fact that I think compared to some of the other Disney Plus Star Wars shows we've gotten, this is easily one of the more, you know, I think impressive starts to one of the shows that we've had. I think there are a lot of interesting themes that the show is trying to explore, and it seems like they are really touching upon them very well. I'm just hoping that, like I said, this is one of those shows that really does end up delivering and doesn't feel by the end of it like it really just kind of crushed under the weight of its own ambitions and didn't really have the time to flesh this story out. It feels like they really are trying to do that. I like the slower pacing to it all. I like the more simplistic story. I really do find myself intrigued by what is going to happen in the rest of the Acolyte, and that is not something I've been able to say for some of the other Star Wars shows that we've been getting recently. I think Leslye Headland is a really good find for this show. I've really enjoyed what she's done in Russian Doll. I like a lot of the complex themes that show has, and it seems like she's trying to touch upon similar themes here. I'm not entirely sure everything the show is going to dive into, but I feel like there's a lot that she wants to tackle here. I've heard a lot of people talk about how this show kind of dives into the more murkiness of like the Jedi and things like that, and you know, kind of like the more neutral side of good and evil, and you know how that kind of like bleeds together. So I'm excited to see what she really dives into in this show, because I think that bringing her on is a really inspired choice, and it really does seem like she has a genuine sort of vision for this show, and that's not something I've been able to say about a lot of these Star Wars shows. Something like Obi-Wan, for example, really just feels like someone was brought on as like a hired gun. Like that's why they were there. They didn't really have much more of a purpose than that. Leslye Headland generally seems like she has like an idea of what she wants this show to be, and I really just hope she gets to see it through. I really hope this is one of those cases where they just let her cook. They don't try to hold her back. They don't try to, like, the studio interfered and things like that. It really just feels like Headland had her vision all the way through, and I hope that's able to be the case throughout this show. So overall, I really did enjoy these first 2 episodes, so I'm gonna go ahead and grade them both individually. So for episode 1, Lost and Found, I'm going to give that episode a B, and then episode 2, Revenge and Justice, I'm going to give that episode a B+. But overall, that's really all I have to say about the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. Very excited to cover the rest of the show moving forward, and excited to get to do individual episode reviews again. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've done them, so very excited to get to do this again. But let me know what you guys thought of these first 2 episodes. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Where do you think the show is really going to go, and were you impressed by what we got in these first 2 episodes? Would love to hear your thoughts on all of that. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.